Thomas to provide the statement of necessity for today, please. Ashley?
Thank you. This is Ashley Thomas. This commission committee meeting is being conducted pursuant to TCA 8-44-108, allowing for a governing body to allow participation by electronic means of communication where a physical quorum is not possible. As commission committee business requires a decision and deliberation prior to the regularly scheduled April 1st meeting, the necessity of electronic participation for this committee's deliberation and action on items set forth in the February 10th, 2022 agenda will go forward. All votes of the committee shall be by roll call. This meeting is being recorded and will be available after its conclusion via link on the commission's website. A statement of necessity shall be filed with the Secretary of State pursuant to TCA 8-44-108.
This is Chris Richards. Thank you, Ashley. As a reminder, all votes of the commission are conducted via taking a roll call vote. Please identify yourself prior to speaking or making a motion, and I believe we are now ready to call the roll. Chase, please take a roll call of the commissioners.
This is Chase Engle. Commissioner Sisnet?
Present.
Is present. Commissioner Griscom?
Present.
Is present. And Chairman Richards?
Present.
Is present. Chairman Richards, you have a quorum.
Thank you. This is Chris Richards. We will be handling some time-sensitive matters that require commission action before our next quarterly meeting in April. Today, we will consider the charter school emergency amendment petition the commission received from Nashville Collegiate Prep. Does anyone have questions or comments before we vote to approve the agenda?
No, Madam Chair. I'd make a motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner Sisnet. Is there a second?
I'll second this, Tom Griscom.
Thank you. Chase, please take a roll call vote.
This is Chase Engle. Commissioner Sisnet?
Aye.
Votes aye. Commissioner Griscom?
Aye.
Votes aye. Chair Richards?
Aye.
Votes aye. The motion is approved.
Great. Well, we're going to go forward with consideration on the amendment petition from Nashville Collegiate Prep. The primary purpose of this is to have an opportunity for the committee to ask questions and further develop the record. This matter, at the end, we will not be approving per se this, but we will be referring it to the full commission for consideration if we decide that's the appropriate action. So I want to make certain everybody understands where we're headed with this. And with that being said, I'd like to recognize Beth Figueroa and Ashley to discuss this petition and provide an overview for the commissioners.
Good afternoon, Chair Richards and members of the committee. My name is Beth Figueroa, and I am the Director of Authorizing at the Commission, and I am here to provide you with information related to the emergency amendment petition for Nashville Collegiate Prep. We will be using this conversation today, as you already mentioned, and the information that is gathered to formulate a recommendation, which will be presented to the Commission on Monday, February 14th. Also, we do have representatives from NCP's board, Rethink Forward, and their CMO, Noble Education Initiative, standing by should you feel it is necessary to ask questions directly to them in order to further facilitate this discussion. As a brief background, NCP began operations during the current school year in August 2021, and their campus is located in the southeast region of Nashville. The school currently serves students in kindergarten through 5th grade, and their current charter agreement allows them to expand to 8th grade and serve a maximum enrollment of 770 students. The school's current enrollment is 317 students. NCP's current facility limits their enrollment potential because it is only large enough to accommodate kindergarten through 4th and one class in grades 5 and 6. And based on the limited facility space, the school has been actively searching for a facility to house the 5th through 8th grades. The operator recently identified a property in Antioch, which is large enough to build a facility, and through board discussions and the budgeting process, it was determined that the most feasible and effective use of the identified land, as well as to meet the financial requirements necessary to build the facility, would be to expand their current enrollment model to serve grades kindergarten through 12th. And as such, NCP proposes to keep grades kindergarten through 4th at their current location and build a new facility to serve grades 5 through 12. In addition to the expansion of the grade levels, NCP is also requesting an increase of enrollment to 1,668 to accommodate the addition of these grade levels. Commission staff completed our review of the amendment application, additional documents that were provided by NCP at our request, and we also conducted a 90-minute discussion with the operator. Our review focused on the characteristics of a strong response as defined by the Tennessee State Department of Education's amendment petition rubric. During our review, staff considered the academic results for NCP thus far. Since NCP has been open for less than a year, there is limited data available, and based on this, staff requested iReady benchmark assessment data for reading and math and considered whether the students made grade level gains. When comparing the fall versus the winter data, the iReady assessment data for reading showed an average reading gain of 43% across grades kindergarten to 5th, and math data showed gains averaging 50%. Staff also requested disaggregated data for students with disabilities, English language learners, and economically disadvantaged, and results demonstrated growth in reading and math for these subgroups as well. Additionally, staff requested data related to the surrounding traditional public middle and high schools, as well as schools operated by NEI, and found that TVOS scores ranged from 1 to 3, demonstrating that there is a need for a high quality school option in the Southeast region of Nashville. In order to construct the proposed campus that will house grades 5 through 12, Noble Education Initiative is working with Ryan Company to enter into a contract for the land and construction, and this will be financed by Hamlin Capital Management. Construction would be completed in 2 separate phases. Phase 1 would house grades 5 through 8, and phase 2 would house the 9th through 12th graders. The total projected cost at this time is approximately $30 million, but we also recognize that costs are rising, and so this is subject to change. The new campus is projected to open in August 2023, and phase 2 would be completed in August 2024. Our review also noted that NCP provided realistic and detailed budget, and staff asked the school for its contingency plans should enrollment not materialize. Under the current contingency plan, the operator stated that should enrollment not meet the projected amounts, they would hold off on phase 2 of construction and instead build out through the 12th grade using only phase 1 of the facility. The school has provided staff with a detailed facility plan, and this does entail a timeline for grading the land, construction, as well as taking occupancy of the new school site. NCP has provided letters of support from various community partners and survey data from parents expressing a desire for a high quality high school option in the Southeast area of Nashville. And as previously mentioned, the school only began operations in August 2021, and therefore there is limited data to ascertain whether the provided evidence of support is sufficient to support the projected enrollment included in the amendment application. Lastly, the school has indicated that they do not have any other viable backup plans for the facility to house the current approved enrollment in grades 5 through 8 in the long term. And so should the amendment petition be denied, they would have to go back to the drawing board in order to determine the long-term facility plans. And at this time, I welcome any further questions.
I'll open it up to the other commissioners if you'd like to start with some questions.
This is Commissioner Griscom. Yes, thank you, Commissioner Richards. I do have a couple questions. As I read the information, and Beth, you just mentioned it in your overview, we're being asked to look at a increase in enrollment that is predicated on getting to grade 12. But we also have in here a phase 1 and phase 2, and that if certain goals aren't met, then phase 2 might not happen. And so my question is how we are able to as a commission, to make sure that there are benchmarks or some type of ways to look at progress being made, so that at some point we're not sitting here having approved a number for grade 12 and we realize that, that's not going to happen. And I mean, looks like a significant jump. It clearly is based on a set of assumptions. And if there is the community outreach that that was shared with us, what is your all's best projection that they actually would be able to carry through with a K-12 charter school? I mean, is it reasonable? And if not, how do we make sure there are points in here to be able to determine, are they getting close to that, or do we need to reset and maybe change the enrollment number?
Yes, thank you for that question. That is something that we did consider in our review. The school did let us know that they have been doing online outreach. They are doing community meetings in order to get support and in order to secure the enrollment that they do have planned. You mentioned phase 1 and phase 2, and even though they would be holding off on phase 2, maybe in the immediate future, they could still potentially do phase 2 at a later time once their enrollment. So it might not be the sort of situation where you never do phase 2. It might just be a delayed phase 2 starting. And then as far as benchmarks for progress, that is something that we do have a very robust, it's a pre-opening process, but we could use that same process in this instance where we would be continually monitoring enrollment, and should they not be meeting the benchmarks that we have set forth, then we could meet with the school and discuss future plans and other alternative steps that we could take.
Mr. Richards, may I ask another question?
Certainly.
This is Tom Griscom again. So thank you for that response. But I'm also, it's a little concerning that we know, because we looked at an appeal a week or so ago in trying to make sure you're able to fill the pipeline of students. And can you fill that pipeline with this, we may or we may not, that's sitting out there? So I would hope that, for this, from what I've learned so far on this commission, for this to work, you need to be having that kindergarten class that keeps building, going up. And if you get at some point where, how are you all going to be able to know and measure? How are they going to be able to know and measure that the appeal is going to be there and the numbers are going to be there, so that we don't hit a point and all of a sudden what's being told is, well, we're not going to be able to do phase 2, so we're not going to have grades 9 to 12. I would have to believe that then has some impact on the entry level coming in at the K level, but I may be wrong.
And Commissioner Griscom, this is Ashley Thomas, and I just want to speak to the charter agreement itself. If this amendment request is approved, what the staff has discussed and what we have drafted as far as contingencies for that, because this is an amendment, so it's a bit different than when we're handling an appeal. We have discussed building in language into the enrollment term of the agreement that sort of has checkpoints, and so that we would do an annual evaluation of NCP's enrollment and then have a discussion about next steps should they not hit those enrollment targets.
This is Richard Page. May I have an opportunity to provide a little additional context?
Ashley, are you done?
I am, Commissioner.
Yeah, Mr. Page, this is Commissioner Richards. I'd be happy to recognize you to add some insight.
Thank you so much for the time. I really do appreciate it. Certainly, this is one of the most important questions, right? This enrollment ramp. I will say a couple of things. When you look at the way we thought through this, is you're very much right, Commissioner Griscom, that the kindergarten, that the plan largely is an internal plan where the students would remember, one, this building does not open next year. It's not for 2 more years that the building would open. So we have all next year's growth, and we will have 5th, and 6th. And then next year, when we would move into that building with 5th, 6th, and 7th of our own students that would move into there. There is growth in year 1 of outside students for sure in the network, but it's primarily the kindergarten. As you indicated, you're right on that a lot of the growth is coming from refilling that kindergarten every year, and then the kids keep moving down the pipe, as well as the 5th grade and the 9th grade, which are also entry point years. And we were very deliberate about looking at where the likelihood of entry is and having that ramp be tied to those entry point years. But really that kindergarten, the kids will push over. In terms of the phasing, what the way we see that is we're going to go K-12. In our mind, it's not a question of we would not do the high school. We would open and we will go and continue to build out every grade level. It's that if that first phase would have about 600 student stations, if we get to that second year and we're opening we'll have 9th grade already in that year. But if for some reason enrollment wasn't enough to open the second 600 station side of that building, we would wait another year or two for enrollment to catch up. But it was not our intent that we would pull back on serving grades. We would keep going right on through to K-12. It's just if we needed to wait to finance and pay for the next wave of the building for another year or two while enrollment caught up, it would be more financially feasible to do that. That's what we would do. And I'll say one more thing, because of the importance of the kindergarten, and I recognize we're in our first year, there's not a lot of historical data. I will tell you that we've just opened enrollment recently for next year, and we're already approaching a number of applications for our kindergarten class for next year. So we're feeling really great about our kindergarten application volume has been pretty strong out of the gate for next year.
Thank you, Mr. Page. Tom, did you have any follow-up? Because I have a follow-up on this topic if you don't.
No, go right ahead, but thank you for letting me ask the questions, Chris.
Okay, this is Commissioner Richards. One of the things that troubled me about this phased approach, should we not have the enrollment, is that the lion's share of the costs of this lease are incurred at the beginning with the fact that you've got to purchase the entire property and make the commitments to do the phase 1. I did not see in the budget numbers that made me feel comfortable that if you did have to stop at the phase 1, that the costs of operating and getting that lease in place could be covered by the enrollment. Mr. Page, do you have some thinking on that?
Yes, thank you very much. A great question. If you look at the way what's in the budget under the assumptions and what we would propose on the lease, is you're right, that the risk of the school is tied to the lease, right? What they're on the hook for is that lease document. Posted in here is the first year. First of all, the lease they wouldn't pay a dime until August of 2023. So the school isn't on the hook for anything until that building opens. So for the next 18 months, that's all not, the school, has no obligation until there's a certificate of occupancy and that building opens. In that first year, what's in the budget is a reduced lease amount. It's about $500,000 or so in the first year that the new campus opens. And then the lease would escalate in the second year to really what the assumed cost is going to be at the full project cost. Okay, so you see that big jump in lease from year 1 to year 2 after the building's opened. What we discussed is if we would commit to ensuring the lease is structured to be clear that change in the lease amount would only come into effect if the additional student stations came online and those additional costs associated with, right? That's why the lease goes up, because we finance more money for phase 2. So if that phase 1 was decided to wait, then the lease would be adjusted back in line with the way it was in year 1. So the school would not have that big pickup in rent if phase two does not happen. We can structure the lease that way so the school's risk is only tied to what is online. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because that kind of helps me, because my next question was going to be, in your documents, you've got an indication that you have a understanding that the lease is going to be structured so it's limited to 15% of the revenue, which of course is based on enrollment. And that caused me a lot of concern because, you know, can you actually get that kind of lease negotiated? And secondly, what is the interest rate that you guys think you're going to be working with? Because we're in a period of rising interest rates,
Right.
and that's a concern.
Yeah, just to be clear, that percentage was really tied to just that first year as a way to estimate the revenue. The lease, the lease in the at kind of permanency when it's full and open, it was really, we tried to tie it to what we think the development budget's going to be and what the lease would be tied to the financing. So that percentage of revenue was a way to estimate the first year, that the year it opens, but when it moves over to the more permanent number, that was developed based on what we see as that development budget and then what the financing would be on that. In terms of the interest rate, it is hard to say. What we're looking at doing right now is, you know, as Beth, you know, had indicated, and we brought forward previously that, you know, we have a financial partner in Hamlin Capital who's interested in working with us. Initially, in the initial phases of this project, as we do the construction and all of that, there will be a loan that is on the taxable side, so the interest rate will be a little bit higher. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but and then the idea is we would ultimately, if the board wanted to and it made sense and the markets are right, we would move to a tax exempt bond finance, which would lower the interest rate. But that's really, you know, we can't commit to a date because it depends on the market, depends on the enrollment, depends on if the board wants to take that on. So it's hard to say. And ultimately, really, it's about what we would, and the development, the Ryan folks working with the Hamlin folks on negotiating the terms of that interest is really what they carry. The lease won't be necessarily, you know, it's not going to move based on interest. It's going to be fixed. And if the interest rate goes up, well, then that's the problem on the developer side, not on the school side.
Okay, and have you had any prior experience with this developer?
Yes, in fact, they're the ones who built NCP and built out the current campus. And I personally have worked with them in the past in other capacities substantially. But yeah, we worked with them and they did an incredible job getting NCP open in such a short amount of time, and learned a lot about the national. They do a lot of work with Metro as well and other capacities. So we feel like they've built that infrastructure and know how to work in this environment, and so they've been great. Now, just to be clear, all of the work will be done under a fixed price bid contract. So even though we're working with them, they will take all the requirements, put it out to bid, you know, with all the subcontractors, get it all fixed, and we will sign a fixed price, you know, contract. So they won't have an opportunity to just charge whatever they want, even though we're working with them now.
Okay. Commissioner Griscom or Commissioner Cisnet, do you have other questions on this part of what we're looking at? We'll open it up to other questions on other things, but I'm just trying to get everything related to the facility and the lease discussed at a single time.
Yes, Commissioner Richards, this is Commissioner Cisnet. May I ask a couple of questions?
Please.
So I'm looking at the timeline, and it looks like by the time there is a ramp up of going to 9th grade, that's a couple of years out. And so I guess this is tangentially related to this lease piece. I'm just wondering, is it, why not go the normal route or the traditional route of applying for a charter? Because there is time to do that, to essentially expand. Is there an issue with your bank or institution that's lending the money where you need that kind of guarantee. I'm just curious to know why not go about it that way.
Mr. Page, did you want to respond?
This is Richard. I'll be happy to answer if you'd like.
That'd be great.
And yeah, thank you, Commissioner Cisnet. You hit the nail on the head with the end of your sentence. This whole thing is predicated on the fact that we really can't move forward without having the legal authority and under our charter to get financing. So the investors, nothing can really go forward without them seeing that we have the authority to do this. So we can't close on the property. We can't begin construction. We can't go down the road without this. And that is really the essence of why we've even come to the table the way we have with an emergency request and this large expansion. Even though it takes many, many years before it builds out, we can't begin the work without having that authority, because that's a requirement of the investors.
Okay, and maybe a follow-up question that is related. So right now, you're currently K5, expanding to K8. That's all as a single operator. If we grant this opportunity, then you become a K12 operator. So and maybe this is more of a question for the team around what are the implications around that, right? Because if you're K5 and then you have another, if you're under, let's call it an umbrella, you have a K5, you have a 6-8, or however you frame it, and then a 9-12, you have 3 separate entities. If one fails, that doesn't mean the whole enterprise goes down. But as a K12, let's imagine the K5 component of this K12 enterprise fails, then as a commission, we'd be obligated, or in fact, it'd be our duty to essentially have you close. And so I'm just wondering, even with the institutions, how they, have they thought about that? And then from from the commission, what are our thoughts on that?
Ashley or Beth, do you have some insight on this that you want to share?
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner Cisnet and Chair Richards. This is Beth Figueroa. That is a great point that you mentioned with having separate enterprises versus one enterprise. And that is something that we would be monitoring on an ongoing basis, like the regular reporting calendar, all of the items that are submitted to us, we would be monitoring them on a whole, and all of their test data, all of our annual reporting would be looked at as one unit as opposed to individually and versus separate.
And this is Commissioner Cisnet again. So then I guess my follow-up would be to Mr. Page. Have you all considered that, and what have your institutions, have they considered the implications of that, essentially putting all your eggs in one basket as an investment?
Commissioner Cisnet, this is Tom Lee, and I apologize for being late to this conversation and meeting. Thank you for your time. I'm the vice chair of the Rethink board, and I'm happy to speak to that a little bit. I'm an attorney, and in that capacity, I've had the opportunity to work with Knowledge Academies situation schools. You may know there are. Well, in Nashville, there are 3 schools that operate under the Knowledge Academies umbrella. There are 2 middle schools and 1 high school. I think if MNPS were on this call, what they would say is that it is more difficult for the authorizer having the 3 schools with the same board and manager, because there's on the one hand, there are issues where the authorizer looks at the overall network performance, and sometimes they don't. And I'm not being critical at all of MNPS. I'm just saying there are, for example, a cash fund balance. Is it relevant to have a cash fund balance for each charter, or are we more principally concerned with the network fund balance? In KA's case, it's over $1 million now. But I combined. But I would tell you that from the authorizer standpoint, they've kind of gone back and forth. Again, I'm not being critical at all. I'm just saying, I think having the 3 charters in that situation has created as much confusion as it has flexibility. And I think the advantage that we believe we offer from the board standpoint to the commission is frankly having one responsible party under one responsible charter. And you're right, there is some increased risk in that situation, but we think the rewards outweigh the risk, and the rewards are streamlined management, streamlined accountability to the commission in every aspect. The commission's been terrific with NCP as it works through a new school rollout in terms of ensuring compliance on a wide variety of matters. If we multiplied that across 3 charters, frankly, I'm not sure you would gain in accountability what we all would lose in just keeping track of the paper. So our board is confident that the offering of one charter that scales, as you rightly said, offers more disadvantages, more advantages than disadvantages. But recognizing, sure, there is risk.
Well, and I would only add from an academic perspective, this is Sherry Hage, that we are comfortable with the K-12 system because, quite frankly, we like the fact that our middle school students and teachers can be working with our high school teachers around offering those advanced courses in the middle school, and having the flexibility to be able to look at individual student performance and think through courses, schedules, collaboration, articulation from grade to grade within one K-12 system versus having 3 different schools per se on 3 different school numbers, having to divide the schools in 3 different schools, and then thinking through how you have that middle school and that high school work together on those advanced placement courses and the algebras and the languages and so forth. So in terms of the academic programming, we support that K-12 structure, knowing the school performance framework and then the state accountability will be looked at as a whole.
And if I may just add one more thing from the board standpoint, what we've seen so far at NCP, 2 things. One that very much surprised me. I'm not a professional educator. And then something that was fascinating to see. The first thing that surprised us was K through 5, the level of achievement of the students that came to us varied dramatically. I mean, it was kindergartens, 1st grade, 2nd grade. The kids were mostly at or right at grade level, mostly. At 5th grade, it fell off the table. At 5th grade, most of the students who came to us, again, our first year of operation, most of the students who came to us were 2 or more years behind grade level. And so the second thing that has happened is perhaps predictable. We've been able in our model, which is different from other academic models in this team approach that we trained our teachers to and asked them to buy into. That academic model has had tremendous success as we've been benchmarking our kids just the first half of the year at K through 3, good success at 4, and as Tess and her staff knows, at 5 there's movement. It's in the positive direction, but it's stubborn, and so this academic model, we know if we have the chance to bring kids along, we believed in it first. Now we're seeing the evidence of it second. I worry about, frankly, a middle school charter for us because a separate one, because of the distinction, the difference in our teaching model. I think you will see those 6 to 8 kids and then those 9 to 12 kids thrive that much more if they've had the clear opportunity to come through the K through 5 learning environment. I just think academically, our preliminary results from NCP give us confidence in the model. And also there's a bit of a warning sign that if kids are too far back, I'm thinking now about the 6th graders who might be too far back and they come to us. I'm not at all writing those kids off. I just want to say, I think longitudinally, we will deliver better for kids if we have a chance to have them in that environment for a longer stretch.
Commissioner Sisna, if I may also add that during our review, this was something that we did also have a lot of discussion about. For example, there's one school principal that we identified, and so that was one of the questions that we did ask them too, is why one principal for elementary, middle, and high, also knowing that you're going to have 2 separate campuses that need to be managed. And the president of the Rethink Board did say that that was done with great intentionality, and that they want to ensure that there is consistency in the culture and the experience that students are gaining. So there was an intentionality to keeping all of the grades together under a single umbrella.
Thank you for that. And I definitely don't want to hold the mic too long, but Commissioner Richards, can I ask one more sort of 2-part question?
Yeah, no, please, because I'm just going to turn around and open it up for other questions. So carry on.
Okay, thank you. Again, this is Commissioner Sisnet. So this is somewhat related, and I understand we're also talking about real estate here, and so wouldn't want you to divulge what you can't publicly. So if you want to elaborate, great. If not, I think it's just more of a yes or no question. Is there a contingency plan? And related to that, I'd love to know a little bit about the state of the financials of the organization. Like, what's your current net position?
So this is Richard. Happy to jump in there on that. I think as Beth had indicated in her summary is we don't have a contingency plan for building number 2 at this point. This has been a big challenge. You know, we made the decision to open NCP the way we did because you guys were gracious enough to trust in us to open and give us that first charter, and we were doggedly determined to get that school open. And we found a great piece to get going, even though we knew it wasn't going to be able to house the permanent full enrollment. One of the things that I just want a nuance, it's important, I think, for everyone to understand the difficulty. The way Metro works in their zoning for schools is either the building has to, if you're buying an existing building and want to make it a charter school, it is either has to have already been an existing educational use building or a church. They have this interesting exemption, or they have this rule about the size of acreage that is required for a school if it doesn't meet one of those 2 criteria. And to give you a sense, this 7 through 12 is what they have 3 tiers: elementary, middle, high. The requirement is 15 acres of land plus an additional acre for every 100 students in your model. So if you're not buying a church or an existing school, you have to have that level of property to meet the conditions for Metro, so it makes it a needle in a haystack type of situation. The current campus was operating as a school. It was a fine line. It was a college.
It was a business school.
And we were able to navigate through the permitting process because of that. One of the unique things about the property that we found and why we're so excited about it and think this is such a unique find and opportunity is it is about 90 acres of land. But the acreage consists of a lot of wetland. It's on a slope, and there's a creek down there, and there's a lot of area there that can't be developed, which is why a lot of traditional residential developers have passed on this. They've tried it, they haven't been able to get it to work. And we've kind of feel like it's almost like the best use kind of concept, because we're able to use that acreage to count toward this Metro metric of the 15 acres plus the 100 this property allows us to use that, and we're qualifying with Metro under their rule because of the unique nature of the property. And so that's kind of how we ended up getting to this place of like, wow, this could maybe work. And there's so few other places that work. So so on your contingency, that's really where we don't, because we've looked and looked. We even put an unsolicited offer on the church that's the next parcel over of the current campus. We tried to just buy it from them and offer them to just use it when they need it, and they still refuse to engage. So there's not a lot of options. That's why I would say there's not a lot of contingency. In terms of capacity on our organizations, I mean, again, the school, part of the reason why, you know, NEI and our partners and Hamlin Capital, they have a lot of faith in us as an organization because of our experience and because of the people who are running this organization. Why we won't go to a traditional bond deal straight off the top, is a tax exempt bond deal, because Rethink still has to build its net position and its capacity. So a lot of that comes from really the trust in us as an organization. NEI is, you know, we're not a huge organization. We're not for profit. But I will tell you, you know, the trust comes from our capacity and you know, our experience as leaders of this team and their trust in us.
I would only add that the parcel of land that we're looking at is about a mile away from the school. So again, perfect location for the families to be able to drop at one school, drop at the other school, and keep their children together in that K-12 structure, as well as our teachers to be able to work together in that structure as well. So I think it's like a mile down the road. There's only one stop between the current facility and the property.
Mr. Richards?
Yes, sir.
It's Tom Griscom. May I ask one additional question?
Certainly.
Okay. And I'm hesitant to go down this path, so please stay with me. But your financial partners here are also your financial partners that you share with us for Rutherford County. And I'm assuming that as you look at what you are proposing here with NCP, it's fully looked at in terms of the financial commitment that also you are going to be dealing with RCP.
Yes,
Yeah,
it is the fast answer to that question.
No,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, yes.
it's a great question, and I'll just say for 1 second and a pitch on to Hamlin. I mean, this organization has probably $1 billion of investments in charter schools around the country. They are one of the specialists that does this, so this is not some unique thing to them. They have a whole team of people that vet charter school financings, and they're highly sophisticated and they know what they're doing, and each project is treated differently, independently. They've merely come to the table and said, you know, we love what we see in Tennessee. We love this organization. We'd love to, you know, be a part of expansion in Tennessee, but be clear, each project is absolutely, it will stand independent of itself with the way the financings will work.
And fair to say that as we were, and I'm speaking for Sherry, so Sherry should speak for herself, but as we were having the conversations with Hamlin that ultimately led to the commitment letter that you all saw with respect to RCP, that this project was not unknown to them. They were aware that we were involved in a process with the commission and the commission staff to move on NCP expansion if the commission so allowed.
That is correct. And I will also say, this is Sherry, that they went and toured NCP and had incredible feedback in terms of it was one of the most innovative schools that they've seen around the country. And going back to Richard's point, they've done over probably $1 billion of charter school financing. And they do go to their campuses and look at facilities. They do look at the academic programming. I mean, clearly they have their metrics that they determine to look at when they're looking at financing schools. So gave really good feedback on what they saw at Nashville Collegiate Prep. And I think that encouraged them to continue to think about how they help NCP expand.
And this is where I should say, if I haven't already, please come see us at NCP for yourself. We'd love to show it to you.
Commissioner Griscom, do you have any follow-up on that?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, I sort of have one taking it, this goes into a separate area of inquiry, but it's related. And it causes, I am concerned, as you say, you were doggedly determined to get your NCP facility open for this school year, and you are currently under a commitment that you've made to be doggedly determined in getting your RCP school open in the near term. And I was very troubled by this amendment because it appeared that many of the staff resources and the support that would be necessary to get RCP open are likely to be diverted to this project to get this underway if it is approved. Since we have the representatives available to answer questions, can you help me understand how you're going to get all this done if we were to go forward with this?
Yes, ma'am. This is Sherry. I will say that we are currently already adding to our local team of support. We are in the final phases of adding a couple of positions. Tess and I have talked about this a couple of times now. We are adding to the team special populations coordinator. We are also adding to the team locally an HR generalist as well as an operations person for benefits and things like that on the finance side. NEI does have a national support network. We have currently about 25 people on that team with a lot of capacity in terms of we have an education team, we have a professional development team, data analysis team, a grants federal programs team, and our finance and HR team at the national level that provides then support to the local team. But we are in the process of currently adding to that team based on the growth that we are looking at. We are also adding another instructional coach team as we get closer, team member as we get closer to the actual opening of these schools. So our structure is from a national perspective, we have the back end teams that then support the local teams in all of those areas, such as federal programs, grants, HR, finance, my CFO, and then the local team in terms of the education team, the compliance team.
Well, this is a little off topic, but have you gotten the leadership in place for RCP?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Have I gotten leadership?
Have we gotten the leadership in place for RCP? That was
So-
to be the first thing that was going to be done right away once that charter was approved.
Yes, so we are currently looking at the land and the team. We had a meeting last week. March 1st is what we're looking at in terms of making the call about opening this year, or if we're going to need to delay based on the facilities piece. So we will know the opening of the school by that date, March 1st, March 15th, and that's when we will start interviewing for the leadership position, but we do have candidates for the leadership position already.
Okay, thank you.
We didn't want to actually pull the trigger and hire a principal until we knew that timeline for opening.
Okay, well, I mean, obviously that's your judgment, not ours, and I appreciate that you want to have some certainty. Before we go on, Commissioner Cisnet, did you have questions on other topics that you wanted to get addressed?
No, not with not outside of the commission team. So I think we can I can hold those questions for later.
Okay, I do have one question for the NCP folks, and that is, a lot of your materials, particularly those that were submitted in response to the commission's questions, and after they had reviewed the initial application, once again, you just gave us kind of generalities on your approach to staffing. And I'm very concerned because, we're talking about one special ed coordinator and 4 assistants, and there's a shortage of information about English as a second language specialists, people who can handle that situation with a population that is significant in that community, that it's likely to generate students that are going to have those special needs. I looked at the things that were included about how you're going to improve your hiring process or be more effective in it, but we're most of the way through the school years and you have still got deficiencies at the NCP level. Can you help me get more comfortable with this? Because this is a real kind of hot button for us, wanting to see qualified staff.
So I'm looking at the staffing matrix for the year, remembering the school would open in 23. And so the SPED teachers and EL teachers would go to 4. But that is based on the current ratio that we have. However, obviously, if more EL students come in or more SPED students come in, then that number would be increased in that first year of 2023. And then those teachers do go up every year, again, based on the percentage that we see. But as that changes, that number in the staffing matrix would be reviewed each year.
Okay, but
Again,
how are you?
hiring, I'm sorry. Again,
No, go ahead.
hiring the special populations coordinator at the network level for SPED and EL, that's already in process. That's one of the positions I mentioned before that would then be working with each of the schools around looking at the numbers and looking at making sure that the number of teachers in the budget is reflective of what we actually are seeing in our enrollment.
Well, I'm concerned both about the budget and what we're going to see going forward, but I'm primarily more concerned about the current situation. You've got positions budgeted, but you've been unable to attract people with the necessary qualifications at NCP right now. And that's the part of it that I don't see any discussion of how you're going to address that to prevent that from happening in these schools.
Commissioner, if I may, this is Tom Lee from
Sure.
the board standpoint. We, I think, acknowledge and I appreciate your question because it has been the subject of great and regular conversation with your senior staff on a regular basis. I think one of the things that candidly we learned in starting NCP was this. We began with a premise, all of us did, of wanting, we intentionally recruited from a wide national swath. We wanted the widest pool of good teachers. And many of our teachers came to us from outside Tennessee. They were licensed teachers, I think with one exception, a young woman from Wisconsin. They were licensed teachers in their home states, or they were eligible for licensure in their home states, and had made application for those licenses. We have moved, we moved those students or those teachers into the licensure process. One of the things that, for approval by the state, one of the things we've learned, and I confess I'm somewhat astonished by this, but I'm assured it is the case, is that the Department of Education for the state has one person who approves transfers of licenses.
It's the case.
Pardon?
They've added now?
They've added now, but when we started, it was one, and that person was capable of adding about 8 teachers a day to a number of applications that was in the hundreds. So what have we learned? We've learned that we have got to be extra dogged, but let me just say, all of our teachers are in that process and have been for some months now. And I certainly wish we could do something to push the button faster, but none of us can. The thing that we have learned in that process is that to the extent that we are interested at RCP or should you grant the expansion, we've got to, if you will, push the button or encourage our new teachers to push the button faster. If there was one thing that we learned in the process early on, it's that we were frankly counting on the teachers to know what they needed to do to begin the licensure process. And in some cases, we were surprised. Now, that surprise didn't last long. We were hiring teachers once you all chartered us in February. We reached the agreement in February. We began hiring teachers in the spring, and by the early summer, all those teachers were in the process. But in retrospect, we should have been putting them in the process in March.
Mhm.
Even if we put them in the process in March, I'm not sure they would all be licensed by August or September. So we have begun working already with expanding our pool. We've been doing hiring fairs already for RCP, identifying candidates to the extent that there are teacher candidates who come to us. We are getting more information on the front end if they are not licensed in Tennessee. I will, if you don't mind, respectfully push back something on the qualified piece, because I think the results demonstrate from the board standpoint that the teachers are well qualified and they are advancing these kids, and they wouldn't if they weren't. But I do understand what you're saying and don't disagree on the piece about the Tennessee certification. That needs to move forward, and I understand and appreciate your concern about that. So we've also worked with the Department of Education, and one of the reasons we like NEI as a board is we've worked with the Department of Education to get approval for NEI's own teacher prep program. That frankly was a matter long coming and is now in place. And so what that means is if we have teachers who are licensed outside Tennessee or who have come from a non-traditional background here in the state and are not licensed, but may otherwise be great teachers, we are now able to move those teachers into NEI's teacher prep program that much faster and get them on the road to full certification that much sooner. I just want you to know from the board standpoint, because Sherry is really the expert on this, and it's the reason that we are frankly doubly excited about her team in this process. But from the board's standpoint, I will tell you, we have learned a lot. We have excellent partners in you and your staff who have been working with us. And I'm delighted the Department of Education has put some more resources to this task, because what we know is there is a shortage statewide in certified teachers, and the faster we can get good teachers properly certified into the system, the better it is for us all.
So I would, this is Sherry. I would just add to that a couple of things. Yes, we do have now teachers that have been able to move through that EL waiver process. We do have teachers who have now moved through the licensure process. We're waiting only on a couple. But that is, again, why when I go back to what we're adding on to the network level team, that is why we had network level support for licensure, but we are now adding that on local level as well, so that in our hiring fairs, which we are already doing, should we look at a teacher who is licensed in another state or needs an alternative route, that at that hiring fair that is included now, and they move through that process before getting and receiving an offer from us. As well as we now have NCP, which is where a lot of people are stepping up and saying, I want to grow with the organization, I want to grow with the school. And so we've had people step up and say, I want to get into a program to get into leadership. We have a couple of those already. We have a couple of our staff who are saying we want to get into instructional coaching. And so we're moving through those processes so that as this growth happens, the network is able to propel new leaders into new schools that have already been within the organization. So that it has, and the succession planning on the HR side has already started so that they can move through, know the system, and move into those new positions, maybe within a school, but that we're supporting that growth from the network level, but we've added those positions at the local level.
Okay, thank you for all that information. I appreciate it. It's always good to hear when we're learning from our experiences and you're taking to heart the focus on this. It really isn't a question of them producing results. This is a state requirement. It's a legal requirement, and we don't have any way around it. It's one of the things we have to evaluate our charters on. But I'm delighted to hear the progress that you have made. I'm well aware of the difficulty in recruiting and retaining qualified teachers. And that's really, I have one last question before we let our NCP brethren step off so we can have a discussion. And that is, what is your current situation with respect to your retention of your teachers for next year at NCP?
So we're just starting that process, but right now for this year, we're sitting at an 80% retention rate. But what our process is around that, and it starts the beginning of March, is we are asking our teachers what their intentions are for next year. Then from there, we move forward with looking at their evaluation and student performance. And then we provide for them an offer letter so that they know very early on before the summer break that they are wanted back, what their teaching position would be. And then by the end of the school year, before they leave, based on our budget, based on where we are with enrollment, they will know what their possible increase would be for the next year. And then they would leave the school year already having all of that in place. I will also say that teachers have constantly been applying to NCP. So we already have 2 teachers that have been hired for next year. So that 6th grade addition, we already have that teacher hired. And then we have a second one coming in that we know in our 2, 3, 4, somewhere in there, our enrollment numbers are looking like we will fill that next class. So we have 1 teacher hired in that area. Soon as we are able, then they will get into that process. But we are tracking again their licensure already. 1 is licensed and teaching in another state and has already started the process to be licensed in Tennessee. So our retention rate is strong right now, but we do look at their performance in the building this year and how they're doing. And then we also look at, our total enrollment for next year as we're working our way through that hiring. We also provide, it's unique, we provide a school-wide bonus in our compensation package, and we provide an individual bonus in our compensation package. And so what we do there is they, as a staff, sit down and create the metrics of performance that is acceptable, that they are shooting for in the school year on that school-wide bonus. And then they do that at an individual level as well. The staff in January was thrilled when their results came out with the iReady data, because they did receive their mid-year performance bonus. And so 1, the data showed them that what they are doing is working. And 2, by getting half of their school-wide performance bonus, they were super excited to see that that hard work paid off for them. So on top of their base compensation package, we do have those bonuses put in there so that we are paying our teachers additional dollars to support both their performance and their retention.
Okay, thank you very much. Do any of the commissioners have questions for our NCP guests before I ask Chase to go ahead and put them into a listen-only mode so we can have our discussion? Okay, nobody has any further questions. Chase, if you can put them in listen only, but thank you all very much. Your insight and additional information was extremely helpful. Okay, Chase, it looks like we've got that done. Okay, I'll open the floor. This is to me, a situation with some considerable risk. We have explored it. I think the staff has explored it. The first thing I'm going to do is turn this over to Beth and Ashley to give their insight and any additional insight beyond the materials you furnished on where we are, and then I'll ask Commissioners Griscom and Cisna to weigh in on sort of where they are, and then we'll ask for a motion to go forward. Ashley or Beth?
Thank you, Chair Rich. Oh, do you want to go first,
Go
Ashley?
ahead, Beth. No.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair Richards. I appreciate all of those comments. And as you mentioned, there is a lot of moving items and components that we do need to identify and evaluate as part of this amendment petition. It is significant adding just the 9th through 12th. There's also the addition of enrollment, taking on a facility project, and the financials related to that. So it will require a great amount of effort from our staff. And I know Ashley will go into this in greater detail, but it does require a lot of additional monitoring and reviewing to make sure that all of the benchmarks are being met and that they are on track to succeed. Specifically, we've talked a lot about teacher retention and staffing. We are aware of some staffing items that have come up at the school site, and that's something that we're monitoring through quarterly reports. And also with just the financials, we haven't had an opportunity to do our annual report, but during our annual report, which we will be doing as part of our site visits and into the spring and summer, that's where we will really dive into their financials and where they stand. And so right now we are in kind of this season where we do have limited data, limited information. And so, but I would say from a staff perspective, being committed to whatever you task us with as far as ongoing monitoring is concerned.
Thank you.
And this is Ashley Thomas. Just to add on to what Beth was saying, speaking to the lift of the staff, as I mentioned earlier, part of what we would do with the charter agreement in making these amendments, it would be a little bit more detailed than just indicating the increase in grade and the increase in enrollment. We have discussed having language in the charter agreement that speaks to a more regular cadence of check-ins. We've asked that NCP produce a development schedule of the progress of the construction of the second campus, but additionally that enrollment and how that is looking is, and because this is an amendment, if it is the will of the commission and they want some language regarding staffing, I mean, there are already statutory allowances that the commission has, but we may want to have language in the agreement that sort of speaks to reporting out what their staffing looks like in addition to that enrollment and where the facility development is, how that's progressing as well.
Okay, thank you. I would suggest, I know that we're going to be getting a final recommendation from our executive director on, I guess, Monday before our meeting next week, that if those kinds of additional requirements are going to be put in the charter, that we are pretty specific in that recommendation, because I know if I were a commissioner who had not participated in this committee today and I was looking at this, they probably would have many of the same kinds of questions we've already explored, and I would want to know what's going to be put in place beyond an addition of grades and enrollment. to help me understand how we're going to help them succeed. And we want them positioned to success for sure. But with that, I'm going to ask Commissioners Griscom and Cisnet if you have other thoughts or comments.
This is Commissioner Cisnet, and I apologize. I'll need to. I have a hard stop in about 5 minutes, but I think
Okay.
just
We'll
one other
get to the vote.
consideration. Okay, just one other consideration around what the implications are of approving this, and what that means for schools down the road that want to also follow suit. I just want to know what those implications are, rather than going the more traditional route of an amended charter application or an expansion charter.
Good points. Commissioner Griscom, did you have anything else?
I'm good.
Okay, well, with that, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that we, as a committee, recommend that this petition be sent to the full commission for its consideration, with the understanding that we will have a recommendation from our executive director before it gets to the committee for everyone to consider. So I've made that motion. Do I have a second?
This is Commissioner Cisnet. I second.
Thank you. Chase, would you call the roll?
This is Chase Engel. Commissioner Cisnet
Aye.
votes aye. Commissioner Griscom
Aye.
votes aye. Chairman Richards
Aye.
votes aye. Chairman Richards, the motion is approved.
Thank you all very much. This has been quite a detail. We appreciate the support from Ashley and Tess and Beth. All of you, your work was greatly appreciated. If there are no other comments, I will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Commissioner Griscom, I will so move.
I'll
Commissioner
second.
Cisnet. Oh, okay.
Chase, will you call the roll?
Chase Engel, Commissioner Cisnet
Aye.
votes aye. Commissioner Griscom
Aye.
votes aye. Chairman Richards
Aye.
votes aye. Chairman Richards, the motion is approved.
Thank you. The next meeting of the School Performance and Accountability Committee is scheduled for March 31st. Once again, I want to thank you all for your time and attention and work in support of this meeting today. This has been very helpful. Thank you very much.